This is a documentary about the founders of America and how they have helped America develop economically and politically. Among the founders were George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, and Benjamin Franklin. Hamilton's finance program. Hamilton supported the tariffs of 1789. He believed that the government needed the ability to borrow money. In 1790, Hamilton asked the Congress to accept the debt of Continental Congress. By 1798, U.S. owned $40 million to American citizens and $11.7 million to France, Spain, and Netherlands. Hamilton's Bank of U.S. In late 1700s, Hamilton asked Congress to create a national bank. He believed that the government needed a bank to manage its debts and interest payments. Whiskey Rebellions. The Whiskey Rebellion was a tax objection in America beginning in 1791 during George Washington's presidency. Farmers used their leftover grain and corn to gain money. They were taxed. The Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton's program to increase central government power, in particular to fund his policy of assuming the war debt of those states which had failed to pay. Many of these people were veterans from the war and they rebelled to this act. Washington didn't like what he was seeing, so he sent 15,000 troops to direct the rebellions. Federalists versus Democratic Republicans. In the 1800s, two strong and first American parties evolved, and they were Federalists, which was led by Hamilton, and a Democratic Republican led by Jefferson. Hamilton and the Federalists believed that America needed a strong national government. They believed the democracy was dangerous to the liberty. They wanted to put the power of the government into the hands of rich, well-born, and able people. Hamilton also believed that manufacturing and trade were the basic of national wealth and power. Supporters of the Federalists included merchants, artists, manufacturers, and bankers. Jefferson and the Republicans believed that the strength of the United States was its independent farmers. Jefferson argued that only land-enabled people would be independent. He also believed that the wealthy would corrupt the government and threaten the rights and liberties of ordinary people. The development of America's first two parties divided the country regionally. South and West tended to support the Republicans, while more urban Northern tended to support the Federalists. Jay's Treaty. Despite Washington's declaration, the British Navy started to search up and investigate American ships going into France. They also advised Native Americans to attack United States citizens. That news pushed Congress to break off war in 1794. Washington, not wanting to go to war, sent John Jay to Britain to seek a solution. Britain didn't want to go to war with America, so they signed the Jay's Treaty, but they had some circumstances. Jay was forced to agree that Britain had the right to seize cargoes bound from French port. He also failed to get the ship back from American merchants whose goods had been seized. These facts were kept secret until one day they broke out and the Democratic Republicans accused Federalists of being pro-British. Washington's farewell address. By the end of his 8th year in office, Washington was ambushed of his character. He chose to retire, and he wrote a farewell address to the citizens of the United States of America. My fellow citizens, let me warn you in the most sincere manner against the baneful effect of the spirit of the parties and how harmful they can be. With that in mind, I also want to tell you to forget about overseas, forget about Europe, and focus more inland. Try expanding the United States into the West. The real treasure is there, not overseas. The election of 1796. The election of 1796 was the first openly contested election in the United States of America. This was right after when Washington left office. The Federalists relied around John Adams while the Republicans nominated Thomas Jefferson. The Jay's Treaty made the election very close. But when electoral votes were counted, John Adams won against Thomas Jefferson, and he became the second president of the United States of America. XYZ Affair and the Quasi-War. During John Adams' presidency, the French began to control the ships and goods. The French action led many Federalists to go to war, but John Adams sent 3 men to negotiate with France. The French bribed about the negotiation. This was known as the XYZ Affair. Number of Americans who had been angry with Britain earlier wanted to go to war with France. Mass meetings and patriotic songs developed in the public. June 1798, Congress suspended trade with France. Congress also commanded Navy to capture armed French ships. This was known as the Quasi-War, an undeclared war. Embargo Act. Because of the attack on Chesapeake enraged the public and American newspapers. Following Adams and Washington's decisions, Jefferson did not want to engage in that European war. Instead of going to war, he asked Congress to pass Embargo Act of 1807. Embargo Act was a government banning trade with other countries, which winded up hurting the United States more than France and Britain. Later, Congress realized that this was not working, and it is costing the Republican Party's political support. After Jefferson left office in 1809, Congress repealed the Embargo Act. These were the pieces of puzzles our founders put together for America.